Global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Finland summons a Russian diplomat over a suspected airspace violation by a military aircraft, its second in 3 weeks, raising fresh security concerns near NATO's eastern flank. Israeli lawmakers will vote on a bill to dissolve parliament, with opposition parties and even some of Prime Minister Netanyahu's allies threatening to back the motion, inching the country closer to snap elections. Debt-ridden Sri Lanka raises electricity prices by 15%, just months after a forced cut, as it tries to meet IMF bailout terms and save its cash-strapped state utility from collapse. South Korea suspends loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts to North Korea, saying that the move is meant to restore trust and to ease tensions under Seoul's new administration. And Hong Kong authorities ban what they called a seditious mobile game that simulates the overthrowing of the Chinese Communist Party, warning players they could face charges under the national security law. Hello and welcome. We begin with South Africa, which is grappling with a weather emergency. Floods and heavy snow in the country have unleashed chaos in the eastern areas. Nearly 50 lives have reportedly been lost, and in the disaster, a school bus has also gone missing. The worst impact is in the Eastern Cape province. Torrential rain hit the Eastern Cape city of Mthatha and surrounding areas, submerging homes, cars, and entire neighborhoods. At least 6 people died here in flood-related incidents. Now, a 7th body was found near the Tsolo, around 40 kilometers away. But the most heartbreaking incident, a school bus vanished. It was reportedly carrying students, but according to witnesses cited in reports, 3 children were clinging to trees and clinging for help. But authorities still don't know how many others are missing. A search operation has been launched. Disaster response teams have been deployed across the Eastern Cape, and weather warnings remain in place. The South African Weather Service has issued alerts for more rain, flooding, and even snow in the coming days. This extreme cold front has paralyzed parts of the region. It has blocked major highways and has brought travel to a halt. In another tragic incident, 5 people were killed in a minibus taxi crash, also in the Eastern Cape. Officials say that the driver swerved to avoid a tree that had fallen on the road, likely due to the storm conditions. The vehicle flipped over, killing 5 passengers. Now, Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane called it a devastating reminder of nature's force and warned people to stay alert and to cooperate with rescue teams. In the neighbouring KwaZulu-Natal province, disaster teams have been put on alert too. The cold front has brought snow to the mountainous areas, and more disruptive weather is expected in the coming days. South Africa is used to extreme weather, but this week's combination of floods, snow and storms is unusually intense. Since Monday, several hundred people have been displaced and almost 300,000 homes have lost electricity in villages and towns across the Eastern Cape. Now, we'll continue tracking this story as rescue teams battle the elements. And for more on this, we have with us on the show Toko Madono, who is a researcher at Wits University. Thank you for being with us.
Good day, and good day to your viewers.
Thokozile, what meteorological factors, for example, climate change trends or regional vulnerabilities, have led to such intense and deadly flooding in the Eastern Cape region, particularly around Mthatha?
So essentially, one of the big kind of, sort of alarm bells that have been going on around climate change and the various conferences of the parties, the COPs, as we refer them to, has been highlighting that many low-lying and vulnerable global South countries are more likely to be impacted by climate change and changes in weather and different types of changes in the weather. So often, people talk about global warming, but the issue is that it is around severe types of weather events. And so you can, as we've seen, this kind of perfect storm, to use a pun, of the bringing together of a weather system that has an enormous impact on an area that is already vulnerable in terms of its geographic and the environmental situation on the ground, so to speak, has also played a role in terms of what kind of infrastructure is available to be able to withstand these kinds of weather events. So it's both a changing situation of the weather, but also the inability of the necessary infrastructure to change in relation to this changing weather and changing weather events.
And talk to us more about this. How equipped are the emergency services and the infrastructure in rural Eastern Cape to respond to natural disasters like this? And what systemic gaps have been exposed by this tragedy?
So essentially, we've seen South Africa, like many other countries across the global South, have a financing gap in terms of being able to both adapt to, mitigate against, and create resilience in relation to climate change and biodiversity loss, because we want to be able to make sure that we're speaking the full kind of impact of what is going on. And so we see that in terms of the budget, and in South Africa, for those viewers that have been tracking the budget this year in 2025, we've had problems with passing the budget. But since around 2012, South Africa has been pursuing a policy of what's called fiscal consolidation, or also known as austerity. And so we've been seeing cuts in the overall envelope of spending towards big important projects like infrastructure spending. So infrastructure spending has been reduced over the last little while, but we've also seen cuts in the ability of key departments and agencies to be able to hire the necessary staff. So what our research has shown is that we are not undertaking what is needed, which is needs-based budgeting. And so we need resourcing and financing. To come back to your question, the Eastern Cape is one of the poorest, it receives a lot, but it's also one of the poorest provinces in the country. And it also has a infrastructure backlog and deficit. And so, just in terms of providing services for everyday needs, it struggles, let alone when crisis hits, like a storm or other kinds of environmental or biodiversity shocks that can take place.
Right. And what long-term psychological and educational impact might such disasters have on the school children, especially those involved in these traumatic incidents, like being swept away or stranded in trees?
Well, climate grief is a thing, and mental health issues around climate has been gaining greater and greater attention, which is absolutely necessary. And we, in the work that we do at the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies, is we're looking at the important nexus between care and care work, and mental health forms part of that, and climate change. And we're seeing that it has a devastating effect on both the physical bodies. So people get injured, they get affected, they get diseases, but all sorts of things happen to them physically, which creates a care burden in some respects on family members. So not only those directly impacted by the flood or the snow or whatever it might be, but also the people who then have to care, the loss of loved ones, and in this case, the tragic loss of children. It's really tragic that their peers have been lost. And so you need, for example, in the South African case, we have the Department of Social Development, which is the custodian of looking after issues around mental health and providing social workers, psychologists, and supporting key NGOs, non-government organizations that provide support, psychosocial support to individuals. And they've just been underfunded. They need more funding. What we really need is a caring state that is able to provide the support that's needed for young people and the elderly and across the age groups to be able to understand what climate change is and biodiversity loss, understand what kind of mechanisms and activities they can undertake to be able to come to terms with what the possible impacts of it are. And then, of course, making sure we have humanitarian support. And the gift of the givers is absolutely wonderful in this respect. They come in, they provide support, and they try and provide long-term sustainable interventions. So it's not just come in for the flood and leave, but provide other mechanisms for supporting organizations. So we're doing more work and paying more attention and research with non-governmental organizations to incorporate care and climate into their work and to provide support for people long term, because absolutely mental health and climate change is a huge issue that needs to be addressed and funded and financed.
Right. Thokozile, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights there.
Thank you so much for having me.
A shocking case out of Kenya has reignited public anger. Protests have escalated over police abuse and corruption. A man who accused a senior police official has turned up dead in custody, and now an independent autopsy says that suicide is highly unlikely. 31-year-old Albert Ojwang was arrested last week in the western Kenya. His supposed crime? Accusing a senior police officer of corruption on social media. He was then transferred without court orders over 250 kilometers away from western Kenya to Nairobi. Days later, he was found dead in a cell. Now, police claim that he killed himself by banging his head against the wall, but a post-mortem tells a different story. Government pathologists say that Ojwang died from head trauma, neck compression, and blunt force injuries. Experts say the injuries were unlikely to be self-inflicted. He also had injuries on his hands, suggesting he fought back. It seemingly looked like this was assault, not suicide. Now, protesters marched to the Deputy Inspector General's office demanding his resignation. They say that Eliud Kipkuch Lagat, the officer that Ojwang had accused, should be treated as a prime suspect. Activists call this a cover-up and insist on Ojwang's that he was killed in custody. And some officers at the Central Police Station have now been suspended. Kenya's public prosecutor has ordered an expedited investigation. The police oversight body has 7 days to submit its report. Now, the veteran politician Raila Odinga called Ojwang's death part of a horrifying list of young Kenyans killed in police custody. Albert Ojwang's family is demanding justice. His father called it a heavy burden and wants accountability. Remember, Kenya is still recovering from massive protests last year over tax hikes and corruption. Since then, President Ruto's government has been accused of abducting several people and wrongfully detaining hundreds. This case has once again raised hard questions about police brutality in Kenya and whether the state is willing to rein it in. The world is watching to see if justice is served. And shifting focus to Sudan now, where the army has accused one of Sudan's neighbors of direct involvement in the ongoing civil war. Tensions between Sudan and Libya have ratcheted up after Sudan's army accused forces under Eastern Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar of attacking border posts. This is the first time that Libya has been accused of direct involvement in the Sudan war. Sudan's army claims the Libyan commander's forces launched a cross-border attack with its rival paramilitary rapid support forces, or the RSF. The Sudanese army says that the attack took place in a remote area where the borders of Sudan, Libya and Egypt meet. It called the attack a blatant aggression against the country, aimed at seizing control of the tri-border region. Haftar's forces denied involvement in the attack. They instead accused a force affiliated with the Sudan army of attacking a military patrol while it was carrying out operations to secure Libya's side of the border. Sudan has been gripped by over 2 years of war between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. The conflict has drawn in multiple foreign countries. While international attempts at bringing truce have repeatedly failed. Now, earlier, the Sudanese army also accused Libya's Haftar of supporting the rival RSF via weapons deliveries. Eastern Libya commander Khalifa Haftar has also long maintained close ties with the UAE and Egypt. While Cairo has supported Sudan's army, Khartoum has repeatedly accused the UAE of backing the RSF. The Sudan army has also accused the UAE of backing the RSF via direct drone strikes. The UAE, however, has denied the allegation. The ongoing civil war has ravaged vast parts of Sudan and has pushed its people to the brink of famine. Apart from widespread destruction, there is limited or no access to water, healthcare, and electricity. In Khartoum, things are worse, where people are also fighting a cholera outbreak. Tens of thousands of people have died in over 2 years of violence. 13 million have been displaced, triggering the world's worst humanitarian crisis. But as peace talks remain elusive and more foreign players enter the deadly war, the crisis in Sudan is only going to intensify. And for our next story, we focus on Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso's military leader and the interim president since his 2022 coup. Since the takeover, Traore has pushed to position himself as a symbol of Pan-Africa resistance, defying foreign influence, particularly that from the West in a turbulent Sahel region. The 37-year-old charismatic leader says he is determined to free his nation from the clutches of Western imperialism. With his message resonating with people in Africa, he has gained popularity across the continent and even beyond. After the 2022 coup, Traore ditched the former colonial power France in favor of a strong alliance with Russia. But Traore says that this bold stance has come at a cost. In the latest, the Burkina Faso leader says another plot against him has been foiled. Traore has repeatedly claimed to be the target of sinister plots and assassination attempts. The latest one is from the 9th of June. Ibrahim Traore warned that foreign powers are pressuring one member of the Alliance of Sahel states to betray the others. He said that foreign powers were pushing hard to fracture the regional bloc formed by Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger. He went on to denounce what he called were imperialist maneuvers targeting the AES unity. Calling for resilience, he added that the Sahel is no longer a zone of influence. Earlier, on the 21st of April, the Burkina Faso junta once again revealed it had foiled a major plot to overthrow Traore. It said the plot was allegedly orchestrated by current and former soldiers based in the Ivory Coast. The junta claimed the conspirators planned to attack the presidential palace and to sow chaos. The Ivory Coast denied any involvement, but the claims made by Burkina Faso's junta triggered tensions in the region. Now, less than 10 days before the alleged Ivory Coast plot, on the 12th of April, Traore once again claimed to have survived a conspiracy involving at least 119 plotters, allegedly linked to the former junta leader, Lieutenant Colonel Doumbia. Now, the junta once again accused the conspirators of seeking to restore the pro-West government. In September of 2023, less than a year after seizing power, the Traore government announced it had thwarted a coup attempt. The junta claimed the plotters included military officers and civilians, and that they were against Traore over his anti-West policies, including expulsion of French troops. The government said that the participants of the coup plot had been arrested. Now, since the coup, Traore's popularity has been fueled through social media, with many misleading posts intended to bolster his image. AI-generated videos of music stars like Rihanna, Beyoncé, R. Kelly, and Justin Bieber were seen immortalizing him through songs, while these global artists did nothing of this sort. The 2023 Russia-Africa Summit is what had put Traore into the spotlight in Africa. In his speech in Moscow, he told African leaders to stop behaving like puppets who dance every time the imperialists pull the strings. This speech was heavily publicized by Russian media. But his popularity comes despite not fulfilling his pledge to quell the Islamic insurgency in Burkina Faso. His junta has also cracked down on dissent, media, and civil society. The country has no place for critics anymore. While his decisions, his anti-West rhetoric, and his antics have made him a hero for many, Ibrahim Traore remains to be a lightning rod for controversy to several others. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Gursheen Garland and you're watching Firstpost. In the next few minutes, I get you the top 40 updates from around the world, only here on Fast and Factual. Let's get started. Tensions continue to rise in Los Angeles as protesters defy curfew imposed over violent protests. The police department has initiated mass arrests to control the massive stir. This as anti-illegal